Good morning, folks. This is Billy Trout with the Tennessee Department of Revenue's Taxpayer Education section. And on behalf of our Commissioner David Geragino and others in our department, we're glad to welcome you to today's presentation on sales tax basics. And joining me today is our lovely co-host, Miss Katie Julian, and Lucinda Richards from our tax audit division as a tax auditor. No, she will not come and audit you because you're on this video. So everybody can take a deep breath. Also, we have our Assistant Director of Taxpayer Services, Dan Vinson, who is here to help us out with some questions that we'll be going through that you'll have later on, I'm sure. And Katie, you will talk about the mechanics of how this is all going to work today, offering you the opportunity, of course, to review this in our webinar library, which we're recording this presentation, and we should have that posted either later today or tomorrow. And of course, a PDF too. And we'll put all this in the chat again. If you've missed that earlier, we'll repost this periodically for those of you that are joining us late. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn this over to Katie. So walk you through some logistics and then go ahead and begin our presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Billy, and excited to have Lucinda here with us on today's webinar. Like Billy said, just a few logistics to go over. We will open up the chat about halfway through when we finish the slides, so be holding your questions until then. We cover a lot of material today, so hopefully we'll either get to your question and what we cover or share resources with you that will cover that. Let's see, like Billy said, we're going to have the recording of this webinar available on our webinar library later on today or in the morning. And if you're just now joining us, I don't believe you can see what's been in the chat up to this point. So I'm going to one more time just post in here. This is the PDF of today's presentation, which will have live hyperlinks in it. So you'll see a lot of hyperlinks on your WebEx screen, but you can't click those from WebEx. You'd have to click them from the PDF that we have. So give you just a second to navigate over to that link that I just posted in the chat if you wanted to download the PDF or access that PDF. And again, today's webinar is about sales tax basics. When we plan these webinars, periodically we discuss topics, and recently we said, oh my gosh, we've never done just a sales tax basics. As you'll see from the resources we're going to share with you, we've covered so many aspects of sales tax, lots of different exemptions, industry specific content regarding sales tax, single article, so on and so forth, but we've never done a webinar on just the basics. So here we are, sales tax basics. Just a little bit of historical background for you here. The Tennessee General Assembly enacted the Tennessee Retailers Sales Tax Act in 1947, long time ago. This act imposed a sales tax on the privilege of engaging in the business of selling tangible personal properties. In the beginning, it was only on tangible personal property. The Act also imposed a complementary use tax that applies when a taxable product is used, consumed, distributed, or stored in the state where the seller didn't collect sales tax on the product that was bought or shipped into here. So sales tax was first imposed on certain services in 1955. So sales and use tax has two parts, a state portion and a local option portion. The local option portion is imposed by the local government. It was enacted first in 1963. The current sales and use tax laws are found in the TCA Title 67, Chapter 6, Section 101 and following, and the local option sales and use tax laws are in TCA Title 67, Chapter 6, Section 701 and following. So what are we going to go through today? We're talking about Tennessee's sales tax. It's the principal source of our revenue, accounting for approximately 60% of all of our tax collections. Again, like I said, it's comprised of two parts, the state and local. The general rate for the state part is 7% and the local rate varies. We'll get into that a little bit more. We're going to talk about who and what is subject to sales tax, the rates, exemptions, resources, and Q&A. It's not quite that simple. If we were to go through every aspect of all this, we'd be here probably all week, but we really are just covering the basics, kind of a high level here. Just an interesting little pie chart here for you. As I mentioned, Tennessee sales tax serves as the primary source of our revenue here in Tennessee, making up a little bit over 60% of our tax collections. You can see that's the blue piece of the pie. Huge piece of the pie here. Um, Franchise and excise in the orange section comes in at second. And then after that, there's just a bunch of little small slices. Ironically, a lot of businesses that are responsible for collecting sales tax. Most businesses here in Tennessee have business tax, or a lot do. And that is, if that sliver is so tiny, you can't even see it on here. So find that, I always think that's very interesting. But sales tax, huge piece of the pie. You see the little dollar graphic there shows you how each sales tax dollar is spent. 56 on every dollar, 56 cents. This goes towards education. And that portion includes state sales tax and local sales tax collections combined. 28 cents out of every dollar of sales tax collected goes into the state's general fund, and 16 cents out of every dollar goes to your local government. Before I go any further, I'm going to take a quick detour and take you over and show you where a lot of these resources are. I think of probably all the webinars we have done. This webinar probably has more links over to other resources. Again, since we can't cover it all, we're sharing with you where to find answers and more information. So I'm going to go over to our website real quick and show you where you can find the manual, where you can find the general tax page, and where our revenue help area is. So let me do that real quick. Share browser. Here we go. Let's go over to just revenues homepage. This is tn.gov/revenue. Where you went for to register for today's webinar, and where you can also find all of the uh, past webinars we've done in our webinar video library. You scroll down on our homepage and click on the tile for taxpayer education and outreach, then click on tax webinars. And from there, this is where you can click to download the PDF that we're going over right now. Scroll down a little further, and here is our vast webinar video library. We've got 58 webinars that we've done up to this point. You can access them all here. You can sort by category. If you want to see just the sales tax, you can type in a key term there. Going back to the homepage though, revenues homepage, great resource is our tax manual, all of our tax manuals. I'm going to go under tax resources. I'm going to click on tax guidance. I'm wondering, is this too small? Should I make my website? I'm going to make it a little bit bigger for you. Maybe that
Yeah,
helps.
that's helpful, Katie. Thanks.
Sorry. Yeah, I meant to do that when I first opened it up the internet. Okay, so this is our tax guidance page. From here, you're going to click on tax manuals, and that will open up. These are all of our tax manuals here. Industry specific ones here, but sales and use tax. Click there. You can see prior versions by clicking here on prior versions, but the current manual is right here. And I make a lot of resources during this references, I'm sorry, to this resource in our webinar today. It's a fantastic resource. If you don't already know about it, you can search it by clicking Control F and typing in any kind of term like single article. That will bring up and show you how many instances of that and take you to the very first one. You can scroll through them. You can search, you can click directly on items in the table of contents to go over to that portion directly. So great resource there. Going back over, and also revenue help. This is where lots of FAQs are. A lot of this information is kind of recycled. You'll find some of the same information in our help as you are in the manual, as you are on the tax page, but just different ways of looking for things. You can type in search terms here, or if you click on taxes and then scroll down, these are all of our different taxes. You can click on sales and use tax, and we have 184 articles on sales and use tax. So great resource there for you. This is also where if you have a question and you don't get it answered from our revenue help page, if you scroll down to the bottom and do submit a request, it takes you over to a web form where you can just ask us a question directly, plug in your email address, and you'll get an email back from us. One other place I just wanted to take you back to revenues homepage is the general tax page. You're going to click on taxes, or you can click on the taxes tile. And you'll see here the three big ones: business tax, franchise and excise, and sales tax. I'm going to click on sales tax. Right now, they're structured similarly. You've got a sidebar here that's going to expand a whole section on due dates and tax rates, registering, that local sales tax, so on and so forth. Lots of information here. If you were to click on tax guidance, you'd see, look, there's that tax manual again, and some other good stuff here. So explore that if you have more questions after this, or just some basic information there for you. All right, well, with that, moving right along here, this is a slide that kind of has the basics all in one. Now it gets way more in depth here, and we're going to go more in depth later on this morning, but sales tax, Tennessee sales tax basics. Sorry, just a moment, please. Expanding something out here. The tax applies to dealers engaged in the business of making sales of taxable products or services in Tennessee. So if you live here in Tennessee, you're going to pay sales tax when you go out and buy most things, right? And some services. The businesses are responsible for that sales tax and collecting it and then remitting it. Retailers, like I say, are responsible for the tax and are to collect the tax from consumers. It's a tax on sales of tangible personal property, which we'll shorten that to TPP, the acronym. Sales of TPP are generally taxable, generally, unless specifically exempt by law. Sales of services, on the other hand, are generally not taxable unless that service is specifically listed by law, or if the service is part of the sale, wrapped in as part of the sale of the price of tangible personal property. We're going to break both of those topics down here in a little bit. Generally speaking, there's a state tax rate and a local tax rate, and that's going to equal the total sales tax. More on rates later, but there are some special rates in Tennessee: food, digital products, what we call single articles, and more. We're not going to be spending much time today on use tax. Use tax is a companion tax to sales tax. You'll hear it referred to as sales and use tax. We have a whole webinar coming up later on this year just specifically on use tax. So it's not really going to come up a lot today, but it's due when sales tax was not collected on an otherwise taxable product brought or shipped into Tennessee. It applies to all items that are otherwise subject to sales tax except for services and amusements. Individual consumers that are not otherwise required to be registered for sales and use tax can pay use tax on a consumer use tax return that is available on TNTAP. Again, we're not going to spend more than just this slide right here. Not going to spend any time on use tax today because we've got a webinar dedicated specifically to it coming up in December. All right, first question is, who needs to register for sales tax? Who has nexus for sales tax in Tennessee? First question you're going to ask is, does the business have a physical presence in Tennessee? If the answer to that question is yes, there's a few more questions. If the business is in-state, tangible personal property sales threshold of $4,800 or more annually is met, then that business needs to register and file for Tennessee sales tax if that in-state threshold is met. If the in-state sale of services threshold exceeds $1,200 annually, then the business needs to register for sales tax. If those thresholds are not met, then the business does not need to register for sales tax in Tennessee. Filing not required. So does the business have a physical presence in Tennessee? No, we're talking for out-of-state businesses. If economic nexus sales threshold of $100,000 or more is met within a 12-month period, then the out-of-state business needs to register and file for sales tax in Tennessee. If substantial nexus is met, they also need to register and file for sales tax in Tennessee. But if neither of those are met, then they do not need to. We do have a webinar with lots more information about this topic specifically. It's called Reporting Out-of-State Sales by Delivery Destination. You can access that if you've got the PDF of this. You can click on that there. Important to note here, for in-state businesses need to register each business location in Tennessee for its own sales tax location. So if you've got multiple locations, each one is going to have their own sales tax Only one registration is needed for out-of-state sales to consumers in Tennessee. So for out-of-state businesses that have no physical location here. All right, we're going to talk for a minute about that tax on tangible personal property. Uh, TPP is defined as personal property that can be seen, weighed, measured, felt, or touched, or that is in any other manner perceptible to the senses. So you might say, well, real property, real estate, what's considered real property, can also be seen. It can be touched. I can touch my house, right? Well, there is quite a distinction between real and tangible property. Real property is defined in our tax law as that which is immovable, such as land, buildings, improvement to land and buildings, and even some firmly attached or integrated structures like a light fixture. Lots more information in our sales tax manual, whole chapter on this, chapter 12, for more information on real versus tangible personal property. Because there really are times when it's difficult to determine whether an item is real property or tangible personal property. If you know the item that you're selling is tangible personal property, for sure you're selling books, something that you can buy in just your average store, retail store out there. But if you're selling something that you're confused about, would this be considered tangible or real property? I really want to refer you over to that chapter in our manual. They're going to ask you questions like what Lucinda's group at Audit would ask, like what is the use of the property? Was the property designed and constructed to be permanently attached, or was it designed for temporary installation or to be able to carry it with you? How is it attached or affixed? Is it a few screws? Is it welded into the structure, built in, cemented in? How easy is it to remove it? So this really comes into play with a lot of different like construction type materials. For example, ovens, a freestanding range, which I have in my kitchen. I'm looking at it right now. I can pull it out and easily just take it with me. It's not even bolted in any way. It's just got 4 legs on the bottom and you can slide it right out. A built-in range would be considered real property though. It is screwed in there and that's a whole different thing than a freestanding range. Um, Another example that I always find interesting is swimming pools. The way it has been determined is that above ground swimming pools that are installed 6 to 8 inches below ground and on sand or concrete, those are going to remain tangible personal property, different than an in-ground pool or sitting below 6 to 8 inches underground. So lots more information again in chapter 12 of the manual. All right, so taxes on most TPP services. The law specifically enumerates certain services that are subject to sales tax. You've got repair or installation of tangible personal property, and in the law that does include computer software. We have a webinar dedicated to that. It's a webinar on taxation of computer software. Lodging services and rooms. We have a webinar on taxation of short-term rentals that tackles a little bit of that. Short-term space rental for making sales. Cleaning of TPP, parking and storing of motor vehicles, telecommunication services, ancillary telecommunication services, and enriching of uranium materials.
Katie, do you enrich uranium materials?
Who does? There's got to be somebody that does because they put that in the law.
It's there's actually language. I think it talks about spallation of neutrons.
Whatever
So
that means. Okay.
yeah,
I bet there's
so
somebody
if
in
y'all are
here
doing
today
that,
that,
y'all need to be paying tax. Okay,
right.
thank you.
So as you can see, very specific things here, right? That are services subject to sales tax. We have a whole webinar dedicated to this topic that is dedicated to services subject to sales tax. So if you provide a service and think you need a little bit more information on that, we'll refer you to that. So services not included in this list may be subject to sales tax when the charges for the services are considered part of the sales price if it's lumped in together with a taxable good, even if it's separately itemized. So delivery charges, labor and service costs, and services provided by the seller that are necessary to complete the sale of a taxable good or service, those are all part of the sales price. In general, labor service performed on real property is not subject to sales tax. So what if you're a contractor who does repair work on appliances? Does that mean if you're doing repair work on an oven such as mine that is not affixed, that is just a slide in, slide out oven, that would be a repair on tangible personal property. But if you're doing repair on a built-in appliance, then that's considered real property, and that service would not be subject. So there's some nuance there for sure. Lots more information though on that in that webinar if you are a service provider.
Hey, Katie, can I interrupt you for a second and bring up
Sure.
something?
Yes.
I think it's an interesting discussion what you're bringing up about the difference between tangible and real property. One question we get, in fact, we get it pretty much every day, is people that want us to kind of analyze their situation and see if something is tangible or something is real property, right? So we do have these examples. You mentioned the swimming pool and some of the other stuff that we've had some different case studies on and all that. And those are very helpful. One thing I wanted to point out is that as as much as we want to help you, we do not have the absolute knowledge of everything you ever do as it relates to contracting or the type of tangible personal property that you have. You likely, as a user of this materials, probably know more about this stuff than we do. Okay, at least so when you're asking us whether it's this way or not, we're probably going to be pointing you more back to the things that Katie is talking about how the law is written and the things for you to consider so that you can make your decision based on your situation. Okay,
Mhm.
not that we don't want to give you an exact answer, we would love to, but there's no book out there that has every single solitary situation explained. Okay. So I bring that up just because we get that question pretty much every day. Okay.
We
Thanks,
do. That's a
Katie.
good point, Billy. And moving on to the next slide, because we are going to detail a little bit more here about repair or installation of TPP. A question I got not too long ago that it will always stick in my mind of being a perfect example of what Billy was just talking about. There's a business that reached out to us that breaks in baseball, so breaks in ball gloves. They break it in for you. You get the ball glove and it's real stiff at first. Well, they break it in, and I had to actually ask someone in our audit division, like, what about that? I mean, so basically that it was determined that in that situation, that was considered repair of TPP, because if you look at the way the law applies to repair of TPP here, what you see on these bullet points, basically work done to preserve or restore, mending or correcting, altering, refinishing, cleaning that is necessary part of repair work, service calls where any repair work is done or contemplated, changes in the size, shape, or content. That was where I think, that breaking in a ball glove, it does change the shape. So um, we'll note here that service calls where a repair is not contemplated or done is not subject to sales tax. So just a service call where no work is performed, not subject to sales tax.
Hey,
For
Katie.
example, yes.
And Lucinda, you may want you're jumping in here too, but
Mhm,
I'll steal the thunder. Tow trucks.
mhm,
We get that question a lot also. So when you're calling somebody to tow your vehicle from one place to another, it's not subject to sales tax. But if you're calling a repair shop, they come get your car so that they can repair it. That's a different story, and that is
mm.
subject to tax. And Lucinda, would you agree with that too? You're muted there,
Yeah,
my
there you
friend.
go. And what I would also suggest too is that if you are still unsure and you've asked everybody, you've done everything, document everything, because even if while you're doing this, you're not collecting the tax, or you are, if when you go into an audit, they can give you credit for it if you need it or not. But if you don't save anything, there's no documentation, we can't assist you in making you're aware of what the correct way to do it is.
Mhm. That's a good point.
And
I
then with
think
the tow
that
truck examples, if you are going to provide, they're going to provide you a battery. That's definitely going to be, they're providing TPP and not just a
mhm,
service at that point. So things to keep in mind.
for sure. And I think that Lucinda, probably you would, and any auditor would say, over and over and over again, documentation and keeping good records is going to be key, especially if you are in a service related field. And you know, when it comes down to this stuff, especially if you're ever getting an audit, like she said, document, document, document. All right, so moving along here, we're going to talk now about rates. As I mentioned already, the general state sales tax rate for most TPP is 7%. Any county or incorporated city may levy a local sales tax rate and cannot be more than 2.75%. If you've got the PDF, there's a link here over to an interactive map that you can hover over any of the counties in Tennessee, and it will list all the different municipalities within that county that have a local a local rate. There's also a Excel version of that on that page, so that might be helpful for you. Now, when you are registered for sales tax and you're in state, you have a location in Tennessee and you go in to file your sales tax, it is already plugged in based on the address of your location. You're not going to have to do that math, so that's good. There is a sales tax rate on a state sales tax rate on food. It is 4%. That is not prepared food. That is food and food ingredients. And this notice 2309, is a great notice. I think that's specifically about last year's sales tax holiday, which there'll be another one coming up this year. But it's a great listing of what are food and food ingredients. So if it's prepared food even at the deli, at the grocery store, you know, a lot of grocery stores have a little deli area where they've got pasta salad and whatnot. That's called prepared food. Do you have something to add to that, Billy?
Well, absolutely, of course. That's
Yay.
what we get paid to do, Katie, is to talk, right? So
I guess.
anyway, so yeah, more or less. So yeah, we did have a sales tax holiday for food and food ingredients last year, which was temporary, and I think a lot of us took advantage of that. This year's sales tax holiday, which takes place at the end of next month, is what we call the traditional sales tax holiday. So it doesn't really apply to food.
Right,
It
right.
applies to the food, excuse me, here I go. It applies to the computers and the school supplies and the clothing and that kind of stuff like we're
Right.
used to. But so that's still in existence, but there's not one on food and food ingredients. And then not for this year.
Yeah,
And
I
who
forgot
knows what
about
the
that.
legislature will have in upcoming years? We don't know. But that's where we are right now.
We don't make the
Thanks.
laws, right?
No, we don't. Don't put that on us, okay?
Speaking
Thanks.
of, though, there was a law that passed this year where here's a link to the notice about it. Certain cities and towns may adopt a reduced sales tax rate on food and food ingredients. So that is more info to that on that to come. There are specified digital products that are enumerated by law that are taxed at the state rate of 7% and a standard local rate of 2.5 instead of the varying local rates. We have a whole webinar dedicated to sales tax on specified digital products. One thing to note here, if a sale is made from a location in Tennessee, the sale is sourced to the location where the sale is made. I just talked about that when it came to local rates, right? So if you're located in Tennessee, our sales tax return is going to automatically charge that rate. If you're located in Tennessee, sellers with no locations must collect at the rate of the delivery destination. This changed about 5 years ago or so. There used to be a uniform rate for out-of-state sellers, but now there is the rate is based on where the rate of the location where the product is getting delivered into. Again, a few slides ago, I referenced a webinar that we have specifically dedicated to that for out-of-state sellers. So if you're on here on this webinar or watching the video and are interested and you're out of state, then I'll refer you to that webinar. We're going to take just a couple minutes here to talk about single article because it's weird. It's different. I think one time we looked it up and couldn't find another state that has anything like it. So if you're in a state outside of Tennessee that has anything like single article, let us know, because I'd be interested to know that, because I don't think there is such a thing. So this is a special to Tennessee. Single article is any item of tangible personal property that is commonly understood to be a separate unit capable of being sold separately. For these types of items like jewelry, a vehicle, furniture, by law, pre-written computer software. For these single articles that are over $1,600 in price, there is special taxation. Just to make things a little bit more confusing for everyone, right? We do have a webinar specifically dedicated to single article if you sell these types of items, or these what I like to call high ticket items. But just a visual here on the breakdown. The entire price of the product is going to be subject to that 7% state rate. Nothing changes there. But then that's where things get a little weird. Up to the first $1,600 of the price, the local rate is charged. And then between $1,600 and $3,200, there is a state single article rate of 2.75% that is charged. Normally, the entire price of the item of TPP is taxed at the 7% rate plus the local rate, but here the local rate is limited to just the first 1,600, and then the next 1,600 of that has a special rate. There are a couple of exceptions to this in Hamlin County and Hancock County. And again, our sales tax return is set up to make that allowance for that. All right, very important here. I kind of put it later in the slides here, but this could have come first. What is considered the sales price? So when you're determining what to plug in and what rate to, how much sales tax you charge, you're going to charge it based on the sales price, right? Sale is also the same thing as a lease, the same thing as a rental. In terms of tax law, renting TPP, selling it, leasing it, all going to be subject to sales tax. But you're going to look here at this list of items here. This is a list of everything that can be lumped in to the sales price. The amount includes the seller's costs, expenses, and charges for these items, even if the seller separately itemizes them. You've got cost of the TPP sold, or of the property sold, cost of the materials that you've used. That comes into play a lot because contractors, we also, I can't remember if I'll reference this later or not, we have a whole webinar dedicated to contractors, sales tax for contractors. They're going to pay sales tax when they go buy something that they're going to be using in the process of their contracting, but they can roll that cost into the sales price, right? Okay. Cost of labor or services, cost of incoming freight, any taxes imposed on the seller, services necessary to complete the sale. This is where that comes back up. Delivery charges, installation charges, all of those are the sale, can be included in the sales price. Okay, big one here, exemptions. We've got usage-based, product-based, entity-based, much more details about exemptions in the sales tax manual, chapters 18 and 19. We'll break it down just a little bit here. Use-based exemptions are available when certain types of TPP or services are put to a specific exempt use. For example, concrete is generally subject to sales tax, right? However, if the concrete is purchased for a use to construct an electric generating plant, it's going to be exempt, such as a dam. The concrete is tax exempt. Most use-based exemptions require a special exemption certificate, such as pollution control exemption certificate. So if you are a retailer, a seller that is selling something, and someone comes and they say, I should not be paying tax on this item that I'm purchasing from you because I have an exemption for it. They're going to need to provide you with a valid exemption certificate. And Lucinda would tell you this all day long too. If you're the seller, you need to hang on to that, retain that certificate, a copy of it for your records. There are some products that don't require an exemption certificate, but just by the nature of what they are, they're not subject to tax. So a lot of those, if you sell these types of products, textbooks, school meals, certain healthcare items, probably if you have software, point of sale software, they're going to be included in there as being exempt from sales tax. But if you believe that you do sell any of these products, then I would refer you over to our sales tax manual so you can see if any of these products that you're selling are just not subject to tax by nature of what they are. So entity-based exemptions are available depending on who the purchaser is or what they do. For example, qualified farmers and qualified manufacturers can make purchases of certain items tax-free. Most entity-based exemptions require a special exemption certificate as well. So you see a breakdown here, government exemption, they're going to provide you with a government exemption form. Nonprofits are gonna, they can provide you with their federally issued 501c3 or a Tennessee exemption certificate. There's a farmer, agriculture exemption, manufacturer's exemption. If you are a seller of a product and you're provided with one of these exemption certificates and have a question about the validity of it, you can feel free to reach out to us, or there's also a place on our website that where you can look up the status of an exemption certificate. Little bit more on exemptions. You can see this snip here. This is just a screenshot of several webinars that we have done in the past that are just dedicated to sales tax exemptions. So might be interesting little homework for you to do to watch some of those webinars. Exemptions, Schedule A, this is where you're going to report most product exemptions and entity exemptions. Schedule G, is for temporary exemptions, like the special last year's food exemption, the special sales tax exemption that's coming up later next month, as Billy mentioned. Anytime where the legislators put into play a temporary exemption, they have their own schedule there. Hey, Lucinda, you got something to add to this one?
Yeah, and when you're doing these exemptions, make sure that, because some of them you have to apply for prior to even handling that sale or doing that purchase. And if you don't have that exemption, it can disqualify you in some way, some cases. So always make sure before you do a transaction, check it out and make sure that the exemption is going to be one that's valid for your industry or your company.
That's right. So you can't just say, well, I'm a farmer, so I don't need to pay for that hay. You
Exactly.
have to apply. Thank you for mentioning that. So I'm going to go back a slide. There's more information about this in the manual, of course, but also let me take you over to I'm going to take you back over to the website again, just really quickly, and show you where all the exemption applications are. So I'm going back to just the tax page. And I'm going to click on sales and use tax page here. Under forms is where you're going to see, I'm going to click on this and you'll see here how many there are, just the general paper form. But then look at here. I'm going to scroll kind of slowly. These are all the different exemption forms. So if you believe that you might be exempt from being able to if you're an exempt entity or have an exempt usage, check that out.
Hey, Katie,
Yes,
a
sir.
little commercial for our registration area and taxpayer services on exemptions. Number one, apply early. Don't wait till the last minute. Okay. Sorry, it sounds real simple, but
It
it
can take some
happens.
time to process it because exemption
Yes,
applications are pretty intense. I mean,
they are. They are. It
by
takes a
law,
lot.
they
It
are.
takes a lot of analysis, and
Mhm,
some of these very odd ones, like I don't know, like pollution control.
mhm.
Well, this is not something we deal with every day. Okay, so we have to dig and look up stuff, and we may ask for additional documentation, which gets
Right,
to
right.
this fact. If we ask you for data on the form, like your federal ID number, as an example, we have to have it. Okay, so please make sure you take time to complete the application fully. Make sure you put every name exactly the way it's supposed to be. Make sure the location address is right. Make sure everything is right so that we can give you a proper exemption form, and we can do it as quickly as we can to meet your needs. Okay,
One thing
that's
to
just all
note
I want to say.
One thing to note, Billy, too, that some of these are paper that have to go in.
Mhm.
We're trying to get more of
Yes.
these are going to go online, but they're in the process of doing that. So if they're paper, it's going to take a little time to get us that paper, do it by emails or whatever, and get that processed for you. So definitely do it early and do it as thorough as you can.
Right, and you can submit those electronically, scan all your information, including any documentation, into our email address, and Katie will go through that email link
Yes.
here in just a second. I think a lot of you know what that is, but we'll cover that again in just a minute. Thanks, Katie.
Sure. I'm gonna move along here for sake of time. I've been talking too much, I think. On the resale certificate, very important part of opening up a sales tax account. Once you register for a sales tax account, you automatically receive a certificate of resale. That means you can buy products that you intend or that you will be reselling. You can buy those products without paying tax on them. If you are a seller, you may receive these just the same thing as a government exemption or agriculture exemption. You're going to be receiving these certificates of resale for any of your customers that are buying things from you that tax-free that they're intending to resell. If there's an item that you bought on your resale certificate, if you're a business and there's an item that you intended to resell, but you ended up using it, this is the only other time today that I'll talk about the use tax. There is a line on our sales tax return to account for that. If you ended up pulling it from your inventory and used it, you'll have to pay use tax on that. But this resale certificate is issued by location. Each location needs its own certificate. They don't expire, but are no longer valid when a location is closed. And again, cannot stress this enough, can only be used for items intended for resale. We do have a webinar dedicated to resale certificates. With lots of helpful information there, lots of tips that Audit gave us on that one. For example, if you're buying products for your business mixed in with if you're buying products that are intended for resale mixed in with products that you're just going to be using, like if you go to a big box store to buy items that you're going to be reselling, but you're also buying some cleaning supplies for your office or for the restaurant, those cleaning supplies, it's cleaner to separate it all out and make that be two separate transactions. That way you're only using that resale certificate for the items that you're reselling, the stuff you're going to be using. You got to pay sales tax on that. Okay, so moving on here to talk about filing for a minute. Sales tax is due on the 20th day of the month following the period. Very important, this second bullet here. Once an account is open, the filing must begin even if no sales. So file 0 if needed. This happens all the time when a business first opens. You want to open up that sales tax account because maybe you need to start stocking your shelves and buying inventory. So you need that resale certificate, but you're not opening for a couple months. You still need to go in by the 20th. We don't know that you're not opening, so you'll need to go in by the 20th. And it's very simple. If you have 0 sales, you just answer a quick question when you open up the return on our on TinTap, our online filing, that just says, "Do you have any sales to report?" If you click no, you just put your password in. You're done for that month. But I used to work in our collections division, and so many sales tax accounts ended up in collections and in default because someone registered for a sales tax account and didn't realize that they needed to start filing even though they didn't have sales yet. Typically, there's no option for a filing extension. Sometimes in the rare cases of natural disasters, there can be, but for the most part, no extension. You just have to file by the 20th, no matter what. And sales tax accounts are generally set up monthly. Now, over time, if you do not have, if you don't meet a certain threshold in sales, you can switch your sales tax account over to be either annual or quarterly. Reach out to us for that, but they're set up in the beginning as monthly. A few
Hey, Katie,
resources.
can I interrupt for a second?
You want me to go back?
Yeah. So, super important. Just as important as starting properly is stopping properly. And I know that's not really what we're talking about today, but just one more time. We don't have a crystal ball at the good old Department of Revenue. We do not know when you close. You have to tell us. So one of the best and easiest ways to do it is on TinTap. You can close your accounts, okay? But just because you close an account does not mean you have filed the last tax return that you need. So, sales tax return, file that for the final period. We're not talking about franchise and excise tax returns today, but typically we see businesses that might look, it's May when we're recording this today. So they may close their business today. Well, we still need the 2024 franchise and excise return. Okay. Super important to get out of business properly, just like it is when you start. So that's all I wanted to tell you. And thank you very much for letting me interrupt you one more time, Katie.
Always a good point to mention that for sure. And again, talking back to speaking of working for our collections division at one point in time, lots of businesses end up collections because they didn't close out properly as well. So I did go ahead and open up the chat because we're getting to the end of the slides right now. So go ahead and start putting your questions in there for Lucinda and for the rest of the panel. Some resources I want to share with you specifically dedicated to filing. There's a web page that gives information about electronic filing through vendor software. Very common for businesses to use software for point of sale software and such. We have a webinar dedicated to completing the sales tax return. This is one that in the past 4 years since we've started doing webinars, we had to do a repeat of this one because a lot had changed on the sales tax return. We just redid this webinar on completing the sales tax return this past fall. There's a help video dedicated to walking you through how to do it in TINTAP, and pages 27 through 29 at this point, at the time of recording, in our sales tax manual, some more information about filing there. All right, so I see lots of questions coming into the chat. I want to just share with you this page. Again, so many topics surrounding sales tax. There's no way we could get to it all today, but we do have other webinars that we've done up to this point and some upcoming that deal with very special situations regarding sales tax. For example, special events. We have a webinar for that. We're going to be doing a webinar dedicated to marketplace facilitators and sellers soon. We have a whole webinar dedicated to e-commerce sales. We're going to be doing a webinar dedicated to amusements. That's a whole nother topic when it comes to sales tax. Mentioned earlier, yes, I did put that in here. A webinar for sales tax for contractors. A very recent webinar about taxation of hemp-derived cannabinoids, Tennessee tobacco taxes, and an alcohol tax webinar coming soon. Those last three listed there have their own tax, but the tax, the hemp tax, the tobacco tax, alcohol taxes are in addition to sales tax. So if you sell any of those products, it might be helpful to refer to those. All right, so as I was yapping, I was seeing lots of chats popping up over there. Lucinda, Billy, what are we seeing over in the chat? Anything we want to mention?
Well, first of all, we would be here until the end of the week answering the questions. So I would love to be able to answer all these, and you guys are asking some very good questions. One question I had for Lucinda as we get this part kicked off here, I just want to know from your perspective in audit, can you tell us some of the main issues that you see regarding sales tax filing so that we can, kind of let people know maybe some hot button things to kind of look out for? Would you mind commenting on that real quick?
Yes, some of the basic issues is always with documentation, because when we go in there and we ask for certain things, we're trying to collaborate what you've already done. You filed with us, and you've basically got your sales. You determined what are taxable, what are not, and if we don't have that documentation, we can't go either way with the proper way to tax you, if you get additional assessment, or to give you credit for those assessments and give you refunds, because they, surprisingly, audit still does refunds. And when we find them, when we're in the audit and finding that it's going that direction, we try to collaborate that. But we come across exemption certificates, resale certificates, and people don't have that documentation. So we have to disallow those type of exemptions and exceptions. They say, I'm a farmer, I bought this ATV. Well, not all ATVs are exceptions to this rule. So always document your stuff and supply us with what you can so that we can actually go in there and get the proper audit to say, yes, we collaborate with your sales and we collaborate with your assessment that you've done this correctly. And so that way a refund or an assessment doesn't go extremes in either direction. And then probably another thing is with knowing what a sale is in your industry, try to make sure you know what you're selling. And are you selling everything? Because like she mentioned, those resale certificates, just because you have a resale certificate, what did you do with that product? Did you use it? Did you give it away? Was it destroyed by a tornado? All those things have different exceptions to them, because when you got that product from your manufacturer or your wholesaler, that was the first sale that happened, and you're responsible for that tax and accounting for that, whether it's a further exceptions for you or it's going to be the consumer that you're collecting it from. Those things have to be considered. So always document, I can't say it enough, but document, document, document.
Good point. Good point. All right. So, Katie, we had a lot of questions, don't you know?
There's a lot of questions in here. Yeah, lots of good
So,
questions.
so a couple that have come up here. I noticed one about filing periods. You know, Katie said that sales tax return is due by the 20th of the month following the end of the period. Typically, this is monthly. So when businesses start out, unless they're particularly identified in a certain way as maybe manufacturers or certain types of contractors, things of that nature, our registration department will generally set someone up on a monthly filing status. Okay. And once you complete a year of filing with us on that, the computer will go back and look and see what you have reported. And if it's very small amounts, we may put you on a quarterly or an annual filing period. Okay, meaning that you might only have to file a few times a year versus every month. But until your status is adjusted, you've got to file it, like Katie had said earlier, timely by the 20th of the next month, even if you don't have any sales. Okay, so that's super important to know about there too. Um, you know, lots of other questions that have been put out here. Wow, they're very deep, and thank you for asking some very good questions. Probably we're going to refer you on some of these deeper issues either back to our webinar library, which we've answered probably more of your questions already in some of these recordings or PDFs that are out there. But also the other point is that um, you know, tools and resources for you to be able to find in our tax manuals, you know, that we've got out there that we're very proud of as well. And we want you to email your questions in when we don't cover all this too. Somebody had asked a question about extended warranties. I thought that's always a very interesting one. This is one of the real oddities in the law, and I'm not going to get too deep in the woods on this one, but to just let you know, they're taxed in a special way, and basically the extended warranties are subject to Tennessee sales tax when they're sold in state, but they have a special rate, and they're subject to local sales tax on all the dollars sold, but they are not subject to any single article tax, which is very unusual. Okay.
'Cause a lot of times
So,
warranty applies to those high dollar items where the item
right.
was subject
And
to single article, but the warranty not.
exactly. And
There's a whole chapter for this in our
right. And
webinar.
the idea is that you pay tax on the warranties, but when the warranty work is done, you do not pay tax on the warranty work. And that's good. Would you agree with that, Lucinda? We saying
Again,
that right?
definitely. And again,
Okay.
document it.
Yeah, document, right? Um,
Exactly.
yeah, so mechanically on the sales tax return, you know, Katie mentioned you know, how the return is laid out, you know. The first part of the return is more or less the summary part of the return. Then you go into exemptions and other things of calculating the local tax and the single article tax, and then some of the specialty situations and schedules that attach to that. One great thing, and I think a lot of you that have been users on our 10-tap system, you figured it out already, is that if you just kind of go through there and fill out the lines as they're presented to you, the figures will auto calculate. And I think that's fantastic because the math errors that we used to see back in the old days when people filed a lot of paper returns, they're essentially gone because we don't have to say, hey, you know, you made a mistake on this schedule and you owe us, you know, a couple extra bucks or whatever. So we don't get involved in all that anymore. So that
And
saved monumental amounts of time.
And
So
there's another thing too. If they are
Mhm.
struggling with something, go ahead and file your taxes. You can always amend. We'd rather have you be filed on time and make that payment on time, and then we can work out the issue at a later date if needed, because that way you're not going to cause yourself to have penalties and interest, and then later when you do amend, you filed it late already, and you're going to still have penalties and interest because you did file at the original time. So always try to file on time with whatever information you have, and then go back and remember to amend if you do have those special situations.
right, exactly.
And that
Exactly.
return is going to be available on the first day of the month following the tax period. So if you can fill out your May sales tax return starting on June 1st. You've got till the 20th, and you can even, one of the beauties of TinTap, you can set your payment up to come out later. You can delay the payment if you want to go ahead and file it on the 1st, but that leaves you some leeway too. As Lucinda said, if you're confused, you hit this speed bump in the return, right, where you're confused, and maybe you had some return merchandise or something weird happened that month and you're confused about it. If you started on the 1st of the month, then you've got till the 20th to work that out and maybe contact us, and if you've got a question or a weird scenario, right?
Especially when we're in with all these with this weird weather we're having, tornadoes are happening and different things get destroyed. And if you already have started it on the 1st, if it happens on the 5th, the 10th, or the 18th, you already have your information input there
Right.
to a degree and saved. So you're not going to have to scramble and recreate all your information.
Right.
I'm
Right.
seeing lots of questions in here about using marketplace facilitators and sellers. We, again, like I said, we're going to have a webinar dedicated to this. We already have an e-commerce webinar that touches on marketplace facilitators and sellers, but a really good question here. Yin says, do I still need to register for sales tax if we engage a marketplace facilitator for all of our online sales? So let's say, for example, Etsy. You may still want that sales tax account because what you're reselling, you are going to want your resale certificate for that, right? But if they're collecting all your sales tax, if Etsy or whatever, Amazon, whoever, whatever marketplace facilitator that you're using, if they're the ones actually taking the payments in and they're collecting the sales tax and remitting it over to us, then you would still need a sales tax account if you wanted to buy your products using your resale certificate, but you would still be on the hook for filing that return and filing a zero return if you didn't make any sales yourself where you collected the sales tax. I hope that makes sense. It can get a little bit confusing there.
Yes, and keep a good record on your end too, because even if you do not register with us, and then later you are discovered that you should have registered, you don't have any documentation. You can't show what was taxable and who did the tax collecting or not.
Right.
So that's a good point.
Yeah, and on short-term rentals, when you're talking about cabin rentals and things of that nature, if you are truly renting through online marketplaces and that they are collecting sales tax, and they're also collecting occupancy tax. But the one thing they are not collecting is business tax. So you may owe business tax and need a business license. Most likely you will. And that will be on you to be sure you're compliant with that, even if you do have a marketplace facilitating situation going on there. So
And
at
one
any
thing,
rate, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say one thing with audit too is that we look at your 3-year period. When we go into audit you, we do not just look at your last month. We're not auditing in real time. Every month you file, we're auditing in a lump sum. It's usually 3 years. And for business tax, it can be longer, but for sales tax, we're looking at 3 years. So if you don't get some of these things ironed out in sooner, you're going to be hit with a 3-year period that we're going to look at. So if you don't have the documentation, 3 years of exempt sales that you had could be, you're on the hook for it. So why not go ahead and document it and have those resources available to yourself to show and make sure that you can say, hey, I got these exempt certificates, I still have them. Here's your 3-year period, and we don't have to worry about making an assessment on those type of things that are avoidable.
Yeah.
I see a couple
Yeah, great
questions
point.
about software in here, y'all, and I failed to add it to this list right here. We had a webinar just this past December. That's taxation of computer software
Yeah.
and software as a service or
And
SaaS.
websites and stuff like
Yes.
that, and that is its own animal. Trust me.
Yes, very deep
That's
subject.
a
Yeah.
whole other. Oh my gosh, that's a half hour. That's
Well,
more than a
we
half
actually
hour.
dedicated a whole webinar to it already. So
Right.
if you are in that business, websites, computer software, I'm going to refer you over. I should have added it to this list. Like I said, we've done so many webinars that surround special topics about sales tax, never just this basic overview, but there's probably several more we can still hit, but that one is one that we have hit. Well, we are running out of time, y'all. Still lots of questions. I want to land on this screen for just a minute because this is going to be, if we didn't get to your questions and you can't find the answer to your question in our manual or the help article or the tax page, feel free to reach out to us. This is our email address. When I was showing you the revenue help articles and I said at the bottom you could submit a request, this email takes you to the same place. It arrives with us as kind of a help ticket, and we will respond to you whether you email us or submit a ticket on our revenue help page. You can do it that way, or you can call our general call center Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. We really are here to help you. We have great customer service. You can actually reach a human being on the phone, unlike a lot of
Yes.
places, unless it's tax deadline day. But if you
Right.
don't already,
And
follow
on
us too.
email, just real quick, Katie,
Mhm.
we pride ourselves in answering your email questions back very quickly. Thankfully, we're not in the middle of a tax filing season situation right now. So we can get to your specific issues fairly quickly. So if we didn't address your situation, we apologize for that. Send us that email and let us dig for you and give you a specific answer. Then you can go back and forth with us if you have any follow-ups and that kind of stuff, and we'll be happy to help you and we'll get it all taken care of for you. Okay.
And Billy, if they're dealing with an auditor, that's a good resource for them also. They are there to educate you and help you understand the law as well. So if you're working with an auditor, ask them all these type of questions, your deep scenarios, so they can reach out to other people and get those resolved for you as well during the
And
audit, or even if you've had one.
I've
Mhm.
talked to many taxpayers over the years that have said, my auditor helped me and helped me understand what I'm supposed to be doing. Even if I made a mistake, now I know what to do. And I mean, it's sort of weird to even hear these words come out of people's mouths. Happens all the time. So
So true.
props to
We're
you
here to
guys
help.
over there in audit.
Thank you.
All right, well, we'll say goodbye to y'all now. Lucinda, thank you for being our subject matter expert today. We really loved working with you on this one this
Okay.
month and
Okay.
appreciate all of your input. Y'all, next month we are going to be talking about tax issues. Can't talk tax issues. Automobile dealers. We do have a brand new tax manual out, an industry specific manual specifically for auto dealers. That was the last Tuesday of the month in June, 6/25. The July webinar is going to be on the 2024 legislative updates. We also have a new business workshop coming up where we'll be able to tackle sales tax, business tax, and F&E tax, just the basics, kind of like today, but on a larger scale. It's a 3-hour long workshop that we offer quarterly. That one's on July 10th. You can register for that now by going to our taxpayer education page and then clicking on new business workshops. So glad to have you here. We went a little bit over in time, but we had a lot to talk about. Send us your questions if you need to. And on the way out the door here, you'll get a little survey. If you are needing CPE credit, you'll just answer yes to that question on the survey. Let us know how we did. If you have any suggestions for us, please, we want to hear about it, or any suggestions for an upcoming webinar that you'd like us to hit. Let us know there too. So thanks to you all, and we'll see you soon.
Okay. Thanks,
Okay.
everybody. Have a
Thank
good one.
You.
Bye bye.